The cold metal of the handcuffs hadn't even touched her skin yet, but Chelsea could already feel the weight of her gilded cage slamming shut. She handed over the passport, a 3-year gamble that cost her every favor she owned, only to hear the words that ended her life. "Miss Adebayo, please step aside." Before she could bolt, a hand wrapped around her elbow with the grip of a man who owned the very air she breathed. She didn't have to look. She knew that scent of expensive tobacco and cold rain. "I'll take it from here," Ji-hwan whispered in Korean, his voice a silken blade. Chelsea spun, her eyes wild. "Let go of me! I want a divorce!" The terminal went silent. The security guards, the travelers, the staff, they all looked away. In Seoul, you don't interfere with a Hwang. Ji-hwan leaned in, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning her face like a puzzle he was about to break. "You signed the papers, Chelsea," he hissed in English, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "You don't get to run from a man like me. We're going home." She thought she was a bride. She was actually a fugitive. And the man she married wasn't just a businessman. He was the one person who could make sure she never saw the sun again. Before we find out if Chelsea survives the night or if Ji-hwan has a darker plan for his runaway bride, I have to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your country in the comments right now. And if you love high stakes, no way out romance stories, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss how this ends. Chelsea thought she'd made it. Thought the fake passport tucked in her purse would be her golden ticket to freedom. She was wrong. So wrong. And if you think you know how this ends, trust me, you really don't. Chelsea Jones stood in line at Incheon International Airport, her hands shaking as she clutched her boarding pass to Johannesburg. The passport in her bag had cost her every favor. She'd saved up over 3 years, and the photo inside barely looked like her anymore. Shorter hair, different makeup, a name that wasn't hers. Terminal 2 buzzed with travelers pulling suitcases and families saying goodbye, but all Chelsea could hear was her own heartbeat drumming in her ears. "Next!" the security officer called. Chelsea stepped forward, forcing a smile she didn't feel. She handed over the fake passport, praying the officer wouldn't look too closely. The woman behind the counter scanned it once, twice. Then her eyes narrowed. "Miss Adebayo, please step aside." Chelsea's stomach dropped. That wasn't even the name on the passport. Before she could process what was happening, a hand, firm but not rough, wrapped around her elbow. "I'll take it from here," a voice said in Korean, smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. Chelsea didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She'd recognize that voice anywhere. The one that had whispered promises in her ear 6 months ago. The one she'd been running from for 3 weeks. Ji-hwan Hwang, her husband. The man she'd married in what she thought was a business arrangement. The man whose world she'd just tried to escape. "Let go of me," Chelsea hissed, trying to yank her arm free, but his grip stayed steady. Not painful, just impossible to break. "Not a chance," Ji-hwan said, and this time he spoke in English, his accent thick but clear. "We're going home." "That's not my home. You made it your home when you signed the papers." He steered her away from the security checkpoint, nodding at the officers who seemed to know exactly who he was. Of course they did. Everyone in Seoul knew the Hwang family, even if they pretended not to. Chelsea's mind raced. She could scream, cause a scene. But what good would that do? Ji-hwan owned half the businesses in this airport, probably had security on his payroll. Still, she wasn't going down without a fight. "I want a divorce," she said, planting her feet. Ji-hwan stopped walking. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or surprise. But it vanished so quickly, Chelsea thought she'd imagined it. "You want a divorce?" he repeated slowly. "Yes. I'll sign whatever you want. Give back whatever you gave me. Just let me go." He studied her. those dark eyes of his scanning her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not a mean laugh, but genuinely amused, which somehow made everything worse. "You think I'm keeping you prisoner?" he asked. "Aren't you?" "Chelsea." He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time since she'd known him. "You ran away in the middle of the night with a fake passport. You didn't even leave a note. What was I supposed to think?" "That I wanted out," she shot back. "Or that someone took you." That stopped her cold. "What?" Ji-hwan glanced around the busy terminal, then lowered his voice. "Can we not do this here? Please, just come with me. We'll talk. Actually talk. And if you still want to leave after that, I'll drive you to the airport myself." Chelsea wanted to call him a liar, wanted to run, but something in his voice made her hesitate. He sounded tired, not angry, just bone-deep exhausted. "You promise?" she asked quietly. "I promise." She didn't believe him, not really, but she also didn't have much choice. Security was still watching them, and her fake passport was probably being shredded somewhere. So she nodded, and Ji-hwan's shoulders relaxed just slightly. "Thank you," he said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. They walked out of the terminal in silence, Ji-hwan's hand still on her elbow but gentler now, almost like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. His car was waiting at the curb, a sleek black sedan that screamed money and power, driven by Mr. Kim, his usual driver who pretended not to notice the tension. "Where are we going?" Chelsea asked as they pulled into traffic. "Somewhere we can talk without half of Seoul watching," Ji-hwan replied. He was looking out the window, not at her, and his jaw was tight. "Your office?" "No, somewhere neutral." 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a small cafe tucked away in Bukchon Hanok Village, the kind of place tourists rarely found. Traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern touches, and through the windows, Chelsea could see exactly 3 other customers. "You own this place too?" she asked as Ji-hwan opened her door. "My cousin does," he admitted, "but she's not here today. Gave us the space." Of course he did. Of course he'd planned this whole thing. Inside, the cafe smelled like fresh coffee and sweet red bean pastries. Ji-hwan guided her to a corner table, away from the windows, and for the first time since the airport, he let go of her arm. Chelsea immediately felt the absence of his touch, which annoyed her to no end. "Coffee? Tea?" he offered. "Answers," Chelsea said flatly. Ji-hwan almost smiled at that. Almost. He ordered 2 Americanos from the teenager behind the counter, his cousin's daughter, he explained, and came back with them a few minutes later. "Okay," he said, sitting across from her. "Answers. What do you want to know?" "Why did you marry me?" The question hung between them. Ji-hwan took a long sip of his coffee, clearly buying time. "My father was dying," he finally said. "He wanted to see me settled before he passed. Said the family needed stability, needed to know the business would continue properly. He had traditional views about these things." "So you needed a wife," Chelsea filled in. "Any wife." "Not any wife," Ji-hwan corrected, and there was an edge to his voice now. "It had to be someone outside the usual circles, someone who wouldn't come with a dozen family alliances and expectations, someone who needed something I could provide." "Money," Chelsea said bitterly. "A visa, citizenship, a way to stay in Korea, legally and help your siblings back home in Zimbabwe." He met her eyes. "Don't act like you didn't benefit from this arrangement, too." He was right, and Chelsea hated that he was right. 6 months ago, she'd been desperate. Her student visa expiring, her brother's medical bills piling up, her sister's school fees overdue. Then Ji-hwan's people had approached her at the restaurant where she worked, made her an offer that seemed too good to be true. Marry the boss, get citizenship, a monthly allowance, and enough money to take care of her family. In exchange, play the dutiful wife at public events and don't ask questions about his business. It had seemed simple then. "You never told me what you actually do," Chelsea said now. "Everyone calls you a businessman, but I'm not stupid, Ji-hwan. I've seen the men who come to the house, heard the phone calls you take at 3 a.m. What are you?" Ji-hwan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My family handles difficult situations for people who can afford our services. Negotiations, problem solving. We operate in gray areas, but we're not criminals." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now." He leaned forward. "But I can tell you what I'm not. I don't hurt innocent people. I don't traffic anything illegal, and I certainly don't keep my wife locked up like some princess in a tower." "Then why did I feel like a prisoner?" The words burst out of Chelsea before she could stop them. "Why did I feel like I couldn't breathe in that house, like every move I made was being watched and judged and—" "Because you were trying to live a life that wasn't yours," Ji-hwan interrupted gently. "You were playing a role, Chelsea. We both were. But somewhere along the way, I stopped playing." Chelsea's breath caught. "Wait, no," she inhaled sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means—" He hesitated, and for the first time since she'd known him, Ji-hwan looked uncertain, vulnerable even. "It means I didn't expect to actually like you. Didn't expect to care whether you were happy or not. Didn't expect to wake up every morning and check if you were still there before I even opened my eyes fully." "Oh. O.H. You never said anything," Chelsea whispered. "What was I supposed to say?" Ji-hwan laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Hey, I know we agreed this was fake, but surprise, I actually have feelings for you? You would have run even faster." "I'm running now," she pointed out. "I noticed." They sat in silence, both nursing their coffees, both trying to figure out what came next. Finally, Chelsea asked the question that had been eating at her for weeks. "What do you want from me, Ji-hwan? Really?" He looked at her then. Really looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her want to squirm in her seat. "I want a chance," he said simply. "A real one. No more contracts or arrangements or obligations. Just us, getting to know each other, going on actual dates, being honest. And if I say no, then I keep my promise. I'll take you to the airport myself, buy you a ticket to anywhere you want to go, and you'll never see me again." Chelsea studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the trap. But all she saw was a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days, who'd probably torn Seoul apart looking for her, who was offering her exactly what she'd wanted since the beginning: freedom. So why did the thought of taking it make her chest hurt? "1 month," she heard herself say. Ji-hwan blinked. "What?" "Give me 1 month. Real dates, real conversations, no business calls interrupting dinner, no bodyguards following me to the grocery store. You show me who you actually are, not the businessman or the family heir or whatever. Just Ji-hwan. And after the month, I decide if I stay or go, and you accept whatever I choose." He didn't even hesitate. Deal. They shook on it, formal and awkward, and Chelsea couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. "What?" Ji-hwan asked, but he was smiling too. "We're negotiating our marriage like a business contract." "Well," he said, and there was something warm in his voice now, something that hadn't been there before. "We've always been good at business. Maybe we'll be good at this too." Maybe, Chelsea thought. Maybe. The first date happened 3 days later, and it was a disaster. Ji-hwan picked her up at noon in a car that wasn't his usual sedan, just a regular SUV, no driver, no tinted windows. He was wearing jeans and a plain black sweater instead of one of his usual tailored suits, and Chelsea almost didn't recognize him. "Where are we going?" she asked as she buckled in. "It's a surprise," he said, pulling into traffic. Chelsea raised an eyebrow. "I don't like surprises." "I know. You told me that at our wedding reception, remember? right after my aunt surprised you with that speech about producing heirs within the year. Chelsea groaned at the memory. Don't remind me, I almost threw my bouquet at her. I wish you had, Ji-hwan said, grinning. Would have been the most exciting wedding Seoul society had seen in decades. They drove for about 40 minutes, leaving the city behind and heading into the countryside. Chelsea watched the scenery change from skyscrapers to rice fields, feeling herself relax despite her better judgment. When they finally stopped, it was at a small strawberry farm advertising "You Pick" in crooked English letters. Strawberries? Chelsea asked skeptically. You said once that you missed fruit picking, Ji-hwan reminded her. Back in Zimbabwe, you used to go with your grandmother. I thought, maybe this could be similar. Probably not the same, but still. You remembered that? Chelsea interrupted, surprised. He looked embarrassed. I remember everything you tell me. That was unexpected and kind of sweet, which Chelsea definitely wasn't ready to deal with. So she changed the subject quickly. All right then, let's pick. Some strawberries. The owner of the farm was a tiny elderly woman who took one look at Ji-hwan and started scolding him in rapid Korean. Chelsea couldn't follow all of it, but she caught enough to know the woman was saying something about finally bringing a girlfriend and took you long enough. She thinks we're dating, Chelsea whispered as the woman handed them baskets. We are dating, Ji-hwan whispered back. Technically, as of 3 days ago. We're married. Yes, but we're dating now. It's complicated. He paused. I didn't tell her that part because it would take too long to explain. Fair point. They spent the next hour picking strawberries, and Chelsea had to admit, it was actually fun. Ji-hwan was terrible at it, somehow managing to squash half the berries he touched, and his competitive streak came out when Chelsea's basket filled faster than his. How are you so good at this? He complained after she found another perfect cluster. I actually paid attention when my grandmother taught me, Chelsea teased. You have to be gentle. I am being gentle. Ji-hwan, you just murdered that strawberry. He looked down at the crushed fruit in his hand and sighed. Okay, maybe you have a point. By the time they finished, Chelsea's basket was overflowing, and Ji-hwan's had maybe 15 intact berries. The old woman laughed when she weighed them, said something in Korean that made Ji-hwan's ears turn red, and sent them off with an extra container of already picked berries for free. What did she say? Chelsea asked as they walked back to the car. She said you're too pretty for me and I should treat you well or she'll come to Seoul and hit me with her walking stick. Chelsea burst out laughing. I like her. Everyone likes her. She's terrifying. They ate strawberries in the car on the way back, and Chelsea tried not to notice how Ji-hwan kept glancing at her like he was trying to memorize her face. It made something flutter in her chest, something she absolutely was not ready to name. So, he said eventually, first date. How did I do? The strawberries were a good choice, Chelsea admitted, but you lost points for the squashing incident. That was one time. It was 7 times. I counted. He laughed, and it was such a genuine sound that Chelsea found herself smiling too. Maybe this whole dating thing wouldn't be so bad after all. She was wrong. Date 2 happened 4 days later at a cooking class because Ji-hwan had apparently decided they needed to learn something together. The problem was that neither of them could cook to save their lives. I thought you knew how to make kimchi, Chelsea said, watching him butcher the cabbage preparation. I said I'd eaten kimchi, Ji-hwan corrected. That's very different. The instructor kept trying to help them, but eventually gave up and focused on the other couples in the class. By the end of the session, everyone else had perfect kimchi jars lined up, and Chelsea and Ji-hwan had what could only be described as a disaster in a container. It's spicy? Chelsea offered, trying to find something positive to say. It's inedible, Ji-hwan said flatly. We failed kimchi. I failed kimchi. My ancestors are ashamed. But then he started laughing, really laughing, bent over with his hands on his knees, and Chelsea couldn't help but join in. They laughed until tears ran down their faces, until the instructor gently suggested they leave before they disrupted the other students. "Worst date ever," Ji-hwan declared as they walked out with their jar of terrible kimchi. "Absolutely awful," Chelsea agreed. "Same time next week?" "Definitely." Date 3 was a movie, some action thriller Ji-hwan picked that turned out to be way more violent than expected. Halfway through, Chelsea whispered that she wanted to leave, and Ji-hwan didn't even hesitate. They walked out, got refunds, and ended up at a nearby arcade instead. "I haven't been to an arcade since I was 12, Chelsea said, looking around at the flashing lights and beeping machines. "Me neither," Ji-hwan admitted. "My father thought they were beneath us, said the Hwang family didn't waste time on childish things." "Your father sounds like he was fun at parties." "He wasn't." Ji-hwan's voice went quiet. "He loved me, I think, in his way. But he loved the family reputation more. Everything was about maintaining appearances, about being proper and dignified and never showing weakness." Chelsea touched his arm gently. "That sounds lonely." It was. He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. "You're the first person I've told that to." Before Chelsea could respond, a group of teenagers bumped into them, apologizing profusely in Korean and English. The moment broke, but something had shifted between them, something important. They played arcade games for 2 hours. Chelsea dominated at the racing games. Ji-hwan somehow won a giant stuffed panda from the claw machine on his first try, and they both failed spectacularly at Dance Dance Revolution. By the time they left, Chelsea's cheeks hurt from smiling. "You're keeping the panda," Ji-hwan insisted, tucking it into her arms. "It's enormous. Where am I supposed to put it?" "That's a you problem. I won it fair and square." "You won it with beginner's luck. Still counts." Chelsea ended up naming the panda Lucky, just to annoy him, and it took up residence on the armchair in her room. The room she'd moved back into after their airport confrontation. Separate bedrooms, she'd insisted. Ji-hwan had agreed without argument, which was both a relief and somehow a little disappointing. Date 4 was a quiet walk along the Cheonggyecheon stream at sunset. They didn't talk much, just walked side by side, occasionally pointing out interesting things. A heron fishing in the water, street musicians playing traditional Korean instruments, couples taking selfies on the bridges. "This is nice," Chelsea said. "Eventually. Peaceful." "Yeah," Ji-hwan agreed, "although I keep expecting something to go wrong. We're due for another disaster." "Don't jinx it." Right then, it started raining. Not a gentle sprinkle, but a full-on downpour that had everyone running for cover. Ji-hwan grabbed Chelsea's hand and they ran toward the nearest shelter, arriving soaked and breathless. "You jinxed it," Chelsea accused, trying to wring water out of her hair. "I said don't jinx it. That means I was trying to prevent it." "That's not how jinxes work." They argued about jinx mechanics for 10 minutes while the rain poured down and somehow ended up laughing again. Ji-hwan bought them hot coffee from a street vendor, and they stood under the shelter watching the storm, shoulders touching, not quite holding hands, but close enough that it almost counted. "Thank you," Chelsea said softly. "For what? Getting you soaked?" "For trying. For all of this. For actually keeping your promise." Ji-hwan turned to look at her. Rain dripping from his hair, coffee warming his hands. "I meant what I said at the cafe, Chelsea. I want this to work. I want US to work." "I know," she whispered. "I'm starting to want that too." His eyes widened, like he hadn't expected her to admit it, like he'd been preparing for rejection and didn't know what to do with hope instead. "Really?" he asked, and he sounded younger somehow, uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. "Really? But I'm still scared, Ji-hwan. Of what your life is like, of what being part of your world means, of losing myself again." "Then we'll figure it out together," he said firmly. "No more secrets, no more hiding. I'll answer every question you have. show you everything about my life, the good parts and the messy parts. And if it's too much, if you decide it's not what you want, I'll accept that. But I need you to actually know what you're accepting or rejecting." "Okay," Chelsea agreed. "Show me. Everything." True to his word, Ji-hwan started, showing Chelsea his real life, not the polished version she'd seen as his contracted wife, but the actual day-to-day reality of being a Hwang. The first thing he showed her was his office, not the fancy one in the downtown high-rise where he met clients, but his actual workspace in the family compound. It was surprisingly normal. A desk covered in papers, 3 computer monitors displaying what looked like financial data, and a wall of filing cabinets that probably contained enough blackmail material to sink half of Seoul's elite. "This is where I spend most of my time," Ji-hwan explained, gesturing around. "Going through contracts, researching people, finding solutions to problems." "What kind of problems?" Chelsea asked, sitting in his desk chair and spinning slightly. "Last week, a small business owner came to us because a larger company was trying to force him out through intimidation tactics. We convinced the larger company to back off." "How?" "We found out the CEO was embezzling from his own company and presented him with evidence. He decided our client's business wasn't worth the trouble after all." Ji-hwan leaned against his desk. "That's what most of our work is like. Information gathering, negotiation, strategic pressure. Very boring, very paperwork heavy. And the other times? Sometimes people need protection. Sometimes they need help recovering stolen property. Sometimes they need someone to sit down with their enemies and broker peace." He paused. "We don't hurt people, Chelsea. That's the line my grandfather drew when he started this business, and we've maintained it ever since. The moment violence becomes necessary, we walk away." Chelsea processed that. "So you're like corporate mediators with attitude?" Ji-hwan laughed. "That's actually the best description I've ever heard. I'm stealing that." Over the next week, Chelsea met more of Ji-hwan's world. His cousin Yuna, who ran the cafe and also handled the family's financial investments, turned out to be hilarious and immediately demanded details about how you tame the ice prince. "I didn't tame anyone," Chelsea protested. "Please. He's been smiling for 3 weeks straight. It's unnatural. We're all concerned." But Yuna was grinning as she said it, and she hugged Chelsea before they left. "Take care of him, yeah? He acts tough, but he's softer than he wants people to know." Chelsea met Uncle Jin-soo, who managed the family's legitimate businesses and told embarrassing stories about Ji-hwan's childhood. He once tried to negotiate with his piano teacher to reduce his practice time, Jin-soo recalled, laughing. At age 7, drew up a whole contract with terms and conditions. "Did it work?" Chelsea asked. "She gave him extra homework for being cheeky." She met the security team, not the intimidating bodyguards she'd imagined, but regular people who happened to be good at their jobs. Most of them had families, hobbies, normal lives outside of work. They treated Ji-hwan with respect but also familiarity, teasing him about his terrible coffee-making skills and his habit of forgetting to eat when he was focused on a case. "Someone has to remind him he's human," one of them said to Chelsea. "Maybe that can be your job now?" And slowly, piece by piece, Chelsea started to see the real Ji-hwan, the one who stayed up too late reading case files because he genuinely wanted to help people, the one who donated anonymously to schools and hospitals but got uncomfortable when anyone mentioned it, the one who called his mother every Sunday and listened patiently while she complained about her neighbors for 45 minutes straight. "She's lonely," he explained after one such call. "Dad passed 2 years ago, and she doesn't really have friends anymore. So I listen." "That's sweet," Chelsea said. "It's basic decency." Same thing. But Chelsea showed Ji-hwan her world too. She took him to the restaurant where she used to work, introduced him to her former co-workers who immediately started interrogating him in a mix of English and Korean. "You better be good to our Chelsea," the head chef warned, pointing a wooden spoon at Ji-hwan threateningly. "She cried in our storage room more than once because of you." I know, Ji-hwan said quietly. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do better. The chef studied him, then nodded. Okay, you can stay, but we're watching you. She took him to the library where she volunteered every weekend, helping immigrant families with paperwork and translation services. Ji-hwan watched her work, patient and kind, switching between English and Korean and even a bit of Shona when a Zimbabwean family came in, and something shifted in his expression. What? Chelsea asked when she caught him staring. Nothing. Just, you're really good at this, helping people. It's important to me. My family struggled so much when we first moved around trying to understand different systems and rules. If I can make it easier for someone else, why wouldn't I? Can I help? Ji-hwan asked suddenly. With what? This, the volunteer work. I don't know, maybe help fund a proper center or provide legal assistance. My family has connections. Ji-hwan, Chelsea interrupted gently. That's really generous, but you don't have to fix everything with money or connections. Then what should I do? Show up, learn, listen. She smiled. Maybe help Mrs. William with her citizenship application next week. She's been struggling with the forms. So he did. Ji-hwan showed up the following Saturday in jeans and a simple shirt, sat with Mrs. William for 2 hours, and patiently helped her fill out every form. His Korean was obviously perfect, and his English was good enough to explain things clearly, and Mrs. William left with tears in her eyes, thanking him repeatedly. That felt good, Ji-hwan admitted afterward. Really good, different from my usual work. That's because you actually helped someone. Today without any complicated strategy or negotiation. Just direct, simple help. Can I come back next week? Chelsea kissed his cheek, just a quick, impulsive gesture, and Ji-hwan froze like he'd been electrocuted. Of course you can, she said, then walked away before she could see his reaction. Behind her, Ji-hwan touched his cheek where her lips had been, a smile spreading across his face that would have made his cousin Yuna absolutely insufferable with teasing if she'd seen it. The month was almost up when everything fell apart. Chelsea was at the family compound. She'd been spending more time there, slowly moving her things from the separate guest room into the actual master bedroom she technically shared with Ji-hwan when she overheard a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. 2 of Ji-hwan's associates were talking in the hallway outside the library. Chelsea had been inside reading, and they clearly didn't know she was there. The African wife situation is handled. Then, one of them said in Korean, Yeah, boss did good finding someone who needed the visa badly enough to agree to everything. Smart move, really. His father wanted him married. He needed someone who wouldn't interfere with business, and she needed legal status. Everyone wins. Think she knows it was all arranged? Like, really arranged? Not just the marriage, but how they even met. Doubt it. Boss is good at playing his cards close. She probably thinks it was all coincidence, running into each other at that restaurant. Chelsea's blood ran cold. The restaurant. The day Ji-hwan's people had approached her with the marriage offer, she'd been working a shift when a group of well-dressed businessmen came in. One of them had tripped near her station, and she'd helped him, and they'd chatted briefly about how hard it was to navigate Korean bureaucracy as a foreigner. She'd told him about her visa issues, her brother's medical bills, her sister's school fees, and 2 days later, the offer had come. It hadn't been random. None of it had been random. Chelsea waited until the men left, then walked out of the library on shaking legs. She found Ji-hwan in his office, reviewing contracts, and he looked up with a smile when she entered. Hey, I was just thinking about dinner. Tell me the truth, Chelsea interrupted. How did you really find me? The smile faded. What? The restaurant. The day before your people approached me with the marriage offer. Was that staged? Ji-hwan set down his pen carefully. Chelsea. Was it staged? She demanded, louder now. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, yes. The word hit her like a physical blow. Everything? The whole struggling immigrant story. The connection we had, the conversation about how hard Korea is for foreigners, that was all a script. I needed to know if you were suitable, Ji-hwan said, standing up. If you were desperate enough to agree, if you had obligations that would keep you motivated to maintain the arrangement. If I was controllable, Chelsea finished bitterly. That's what you mean. If I could be manipulated. That's not, don't lie to me now. Chelsea's voice broke. You promised honesty, Ji-hwan. You said no more secrets. But this whole thing, from the very beginning, was built on lies and manipulation. Yes, he admitted, and he looked miserable, but Chelsea was too angry to care. At the beginning, it was manipulation. I needed a wife, you fit the profile, and I made sure we crossed paths in a way that seemed natural. But Chelsea, everything after that. How do I know? She interrupted. How do I know any of it was real? The dates, the conversations, the vulnerability you showed me. How do I know that wasn't just another strategy to keep me compliant? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Ji-hwan looked shocked that he'd said them out loud, and Chelsea felt tears burning in her eyes. You don't get to say that, she whispered. Not now. Not after this. Chelsea, please. I need to leave. Don't. Please don't leave. We can talk about this. Talk about what? Chelsea shouted. About how you researched me like I was a business acquisition? About how you staged a meet cute and had me investigated and calculated exactly how desperate I needed to be to agree to marry a stranger? What is there to talk about, Ji-hwan? He flinched like she'd hit him. I made mistakes. Huge mistakes. I approached this all wrong. But my feelings for you, those are real. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything. Chelsea grabbed her bag from the chair. And honestly, right now I don't. She walked out before he could respond, called a taxi, and went back to the apartment in the city, the one she'd lived in before the marriage, that Ji-hwan had kept paying for even after she moved into the compound. She'd wondered about that at the time, why he'd insisted on maintaining it when she had no use for it. Now she knew. He'd kept it as insurance, probably, a place to send her if things went wrong. Well, things had definitely gone wrong. Chelsea spent 3 days alone in the apartment, ignoring calls and messages from Ji-hwan. She called her brother in Zimbabwe, listened to him talk about his recovery and her sister's good grades, and didn't mention that her marriage was falling apart because how could she explain it? How could she explain that she'd started to fall for someone who'd manipulated her from day one? On the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. Chelsea assumed it was Ji-hwan and prepared to tell him to leave, but when she opened it, Yuna stood there instead, holding a bag of takeout. Before you slam the door, Yuna said quickly, I'm not here as Ji-hwan's cousin. I'm here as someone who thinks you might need a friend and also dinner because I bet you haven't been eating properly. Chelsea considered arguing, but Yuna was right about the food. She stepped aside and let her in. They both ate in silence for a while. Spicy noodles that Yuna had brought from 3 different restaurants because she wasn't sure what Chelsea would like. Finally, Yuna set down her chopsticks. He told me what happened, she said, about how you found out, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. What he did at the beginning was wrong. You knew? Chelsea asked. Not the details, just that he'd arranged the meeting somehow. I told him it was a bad idea, that starting anything with deception would poison it. But he didn't listen. Yuna sighed. My cousin is brilliant at solving other people's problems, but terrible at handling his own emotions. Always has been. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But maybe context helps? Yuna shifted to face Chelsea more directly. When Ji-hwan's father got sick, he became obsessed with legacy, with continuing the family line properly. He told Ji-hwan that he was a disappointment, that he'd failed by not being married at 32, that the family business would crumble because Ji-hwan couldn't even manage his personal life correctly. Chelsea winced. Ji-hwan tried dating normally, Yuna continued. But every woman he met either wanted him for his money or was terrified of what his family did. And his father kept getting sicker, kept pushing harder, until Ji-hwan just broke, decided to handle it like a business transaction because at least that he knew how to do. So he used me, Chelsea said flatly. At first, yes. But Chelsea, I've known Ji-hwan my entire life, and I've never seen him like this. He's completely different with you, softer, happier, more human. That's not strategy or manipulation. That's just him being himself for the first time in years. How do I know? Chelsea asked quietly. How do I trust that anything he says or does is real? Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Did he tell you about what happened 3 weeks ago? The offer he turned down? What offer? One of the biggest tech companies in Asia wanted to hire us for a massive security contract. We're talking enough money to expand our operations across the continent. Ji-hwan turned it down flat. Why? Because it would have required him to travel constantly for 6 months, and he said he wasn't willing to be away from you that long. Uncle Jin-soo almost had a heart attack. We've been trying to land a contract that size for years. Chelsea absorbed that. He didn't mention it. Of course not. Because in Ji-hwan's mind, choosing you wasn't a sacrifice. It was obvious. The only choice. Yuna stood up. Look, I'm not telling you to forgive him. What he did was wrong, and you have every right to be angry. But before you walk away completely, maybe ask yourself if what you built together over this past month, that connection, that partnership, if that felt real to you. Because if it did, chances are it was real for him too. After Yuna left, Chelsea lay awake most of the night thinking, yes, Ji-hwan had manipulated their first meeting. Yes, he'd researched her and calculated her desperation and used it to his advantage. But everything since then, the strawberry farm, the terrible kimchi, the arcade, the library volunteering, the way he looked at her like she hung the moon, had that been manipulation? Or had it been a man falling in love despite his best efforts not to? The next morning, Chelsea went to the family compound. Ji-hwan's car was there, which meant he was probably in his office. She knocked and his voice called out, "Come in," sounding exhausted. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, unshaven, hair messy, wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago based on the wrinkles. When he saw her, he stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "Chelsea—" "Let me talk first," she interrupted. "Please." He nodded and sat back down, looking nervous. "What you did was wrong," Chelsea started, "manipulating our meeting, researching me like a project, calculating my vulnerabilities. It was wrong, and I'm still angry about it." "I know," Ji-hwan said quietly. "I'm sorry. I wish I could go back and do it differently, but I can't." "No, you can't. But—" Chelsea took a breath. "But I don't think the past month was fake. I don't think you were pretending when you laughed at the arcade or told me about your father or held my hand in the rain. I think that was real." Hope flickered in his eyes. "It was. All of it was real, Chelsea. I swear." "I believe you. But here's the thing, Ji-hwan. I can't be with someone who solves problems by manipulating people. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly wondering if I'm being managed or handled. So if we're going to try this, actually try this, you need to promise me something." "Anything," he said immediately. "No more secrets. No more strategies. If you have a problem with me or with us, you talk to me about it directly, even if it's awkward or difficult. You don't try to fix it behind my back or manipulate the situation to get what you want. We figure it out together, like partners. Can you do that?" Ji-hwan stood up and walked around the desk until he was standing in front of her. "Yes, I can do that. I will do that." He hesitated. "Can I hug you? I've wanted to hug you for 4 days straight, but I didn't think I had the right." Instead of answering, Chelsea stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Ji-hwan held her like she was made of something precious and breakable, his face buried in her hair. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I started this whole thing the wrong way. But I'm not sorry I met you. I'll never be sorry about that. Me neither, Chelsea admitted. Even with all the mess, I'm not sorry either. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other, rebuilding something that had been broken. Finally, Ji-hwan pulled back slightly. So where do we go from here? He asked. We start over, properly this time. Hi, I'm Chelsea Jones. I'm from Zimbabwe, and I volunteer at a library on weekends. Ji-hwan smiled, getting it. Hi, I'm Hwang Ji-hwan. I work in the family business, and I'm terrible at making kimchi. Nice to meet you, Ji-hwan. Want to go get coffee? I'd love to. Starting over turned out to be both easier and harder than Chelsea expected. Easier because they already knew each other's quirks and habits. Harder because they were both trying to unlearn bad patterns and build new ones. The first thing Ji-hwan did was sit her down with every piece of research his people had done on her before the marriage proposal. Printed files, background checks, financial investigations, everything. This is humiliating, he said, handing her the folder. But you deserve to see exactly what I knew and how I knew it. After you read it, we're burning it. Chelsea flipped through the pages, seeing her life reduced to bullet points and data. Her visa issues, her brother's hospital records, her sister's school enrollment, her work history, her volunteer activities. It was thorough and invasive and awful. This is actually really creepy, she said. I know, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing and help me find your fireplace. They burned it together, watching the pages curl and blacken, and Chelsea felt something lift off her chest. The past couldn't be erased, but it could be acknowledged and released. Better? Ji-hwan asked. Better, Chelsea confirmed. The second thing that changed was communication. Ji-hwan started saying things out loud instead of trying to anticipate and solve problems silently. Like when Chelsea mentioned wanting to visit her family in Zimbabwe but worried about the cost, instead of secretly booking her a ticket, Ji-hwan asked, Would you like help with that? I can arrange travel, but only if you actually want me to. I appreciate the offer, Chelsea said. Can we plan it together, though? I want to make sure the timing works for everyone. Of course. We can look at dates this weekend. Or when Chelsea noticed Ji-hwan seemed stressed about a work situation, instead of trying to cheer him up without acknowledging the problem, she asked directly, Do you want to talk about what's bothering you, or do you want a distraction? Distraction, please, Ji-hwan said gratefully. Let's watch something ridiculous and turn my brain off. They ended up watching a terrible action movie where the physics made no sense and the dialogue was worse. And they made fun of it until both of them were crying with laughter. This is terrible, Ji-hwan gasped. The worst, Chelsea agreed. Same time next week? Obviously. Date number 15, they'd started counting again after the restart, was a visit to an amusement park. Ji-hwan had never been to one, which Chelsea found absolutely unbelievable. How did you make it to 32 without riding a roller coaster? She demanded. Family dignity and childhood trauma, Ji-hwan said cheerfully. My father thought amusement parks were common. Your father had terrible opinions about fun. Yes, he did. They rode every roller coaster in the park, and Chelsea discovered that Ji-hwan screamed like a child on the drops, which was both endearing and hilarious. They ate overpriced theme park food, won matching keychains at a carnival game, and took ridiculous photos in front of every statue and landmark. I look insane in this one, Ji-hwan complained, looking at a photo where his hair was sticking up from the wind. I'm saving it forever, Chelsea declared, making it her phone background. That's cruel. That's love. The word slipped out before she'd meant to say it, and they both froze. Ji-hwan looked at her with wide eyes. Did you just... Maybe, Chelsea said, feeling her face heat up. Is that okay? Is that okay? Ji-hwan repeated. Chelsea, I told you I loved you during our worst fight. I've been waiting to hear you say it back for weeks. Well, now you have, she said, smiling. I love you, Hwang Ji-hwan. Even though you scream on roller coasters and can't make kimchi, and you researched me like a corporate acquisition. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and perfect, right there in the middle of the amusement park with families and children walking past and the sound of carnival music in the background. When they broke apart, Chelsea was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "I love you too," Ji-hwan said, in case that wasn't clear. "Pretty clear," Chelsea agreed. They spent the rest of the day at the park, riding rides and eating junk food and being completely, ridiculously happy. When they got home that night, Chelsea finally moved the last of her things from the guest room into their shared bedroom. "You're sure?" Ji-hwan asked, watching her hang clothes in the closet. "I'm sure. No more separate rooms, no more keeping distance just in case. We're doing this for real." "For real?" he echoed, grinning. Date 23 was when everything came full circle. Ji-hwan took her back to Incheon Airport, the same terminal where he'd caught her trying to run away 3 months earlier. "Why are we here?" Chelsea asked nervously. "Because I want to rewrite this memory," Ji-hwan said. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to her. "Open it." Inside was a passport, her real passport, not the fake one, and a plane ticket to Johannesburg with a connection to Harare. "You're visiting your family next month," Ji-hwan explained. 2 weeks, all expenses paid, and I already cleared it with your brother and sister. They're excited to finally meet your husband properly, via video call at least, until I can arrange to come with you next time. Chelsea stared at the ticket, then at him. "You planned this without telling me." "I did," he admitted. "And before you get upset, I want to explain why. This trip is important to you, and I wanted to make sure it happened without you worrying about money or logistics or whether it's okay to accept help. But if you want to change any of the details, dates, hotels, activities, anything, we can do that right now. This is a gift, not a manipulation. The difference is you get final say on everything." Chelsea thought about it. Thought about the old Ji-hwan who would have just booked everything without asking and expected her to be grateful, and thought about this Ji-hwan who was trying so hard to do better, who'd planned something generous but was still giving her control. "The dates work," she said finally, "and I appreciate this more than I can say. But next time, we plan it together from the start," Ji-hwan finished. "I know, I'm learning." "You're doing good," Chelsea said, kissing his cheek. "Really good." They stood in the airport, in the same spot where she'd been caught months ago, but everything was different now. Then she'd been running away from a prison. Now she was standing with a partner, planning a trip she'd return from. "Think you'll come back?" Ji-hwan asked quietly. "After Zimbabwe?" "Of course I will. My home is here now, with you." His smile could have powered the entire airport. The trip to Zimbabwe was everything Chelsea needed. She spent 2 weeks with her family, introducing them to Ji-hwan via video calls, watching her brother walk without crutches for the first time since his accident, helping her sister with homework, and eating her grandmother's cooking until she felt like she'd gained 10 pounds. "Your husband seems nice," her grandmother said one evening. "Very respectful. But is he good to you?" "Yes, Gogo," Chelsea said. "He's very good to me. We had a rough start, but we figured it out." "Good marriages take work," her grandmother said wisely. "The question is whether you're both willing to do that work. Are you?" "Yes," Chelsea said without hesitation. "We are." When she returned to Korea, Ji-hwan was waiting at the airport with flowers. Not roses or anything fancy, just a bunch of wildflowers from the same farm where they'd picked strawberries. "Welcome home," he said, hugging her tight. "It's good to be back," Chelsea replied, and meant it. Life settled into a rhythm after that. Chelsea continued volunteering at the library, and Ji-hwan joined her most weekends. She started taking Korean language classes more seriously, and he helped her practice. He introduced her to more of the family business, not to involve her, but to keep his promise about transparency, and she gave feedback on cases from an outside perspective that sometimes helped him see solutions he'd missed. They had their first real fight about 3 weeks after she returned. Something stupid about Ji-hwan working too much and Chelsea feeling neglected. But instead of shutting down or trying to fix it with gifts, Ji-hwan actually talked to her about it. "You're right," he said. "I've been burying myself in work because the Lee case is stressing me out. But that's not fair to you. Let me delegate some of it, and we can have proper time together." "Thank you," Chelsea said. "And I'm sorry for being snappy about it instead of just saying I missed you. You're allowed to be snappy sometimes. I can handle it." They made it work. Step by step, conversation by conversation, they built something real. 6 months after their restart, Ji-hwan took Chelsea to a fancy restaurant, the kind with 3 Michelin stars and a waiting list that stretched for months. Chelsea wore a dress Ji-hwan had bought her, but only after she'd picked it out herself and explicitly said she liked it. "What's the occasion?" she asked as they sat down. "Can't I just want to take my wife on a nice date?" "You can, but you're nervous. You keep adjusting your tie." Ji-hwan looked down at his hands and laughed. "You know me too well." "So what's going on?" He reached across the table and took her hands in his. "I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. No worrying about my feelings, no trying to spare me. Just the truth." "Okay," Chelsea said, getting nervous herself now. "Are you happy?" Ji-hwan asked. "Like, genuinely happy. Not just content or okay, but actually happy with this life. With me. With us?" Chelsea thought about it. About the quiet mornings drinking coffee together. About the library volunteering and terrible movie nights and inside jokes that nobody else would understand. About the way Ji-hwan asked her opinion on everything now. About how he'd learned to say what he was feeling instead of hiding behind strategy. About how she'd learned to accept help without feeling like she was losing independence. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm happy. Really, truly happy." "Why?" Ji-hwan pulled a small box from his pocket, and Chelsea's breath caught. "Wait, no." Her breathing stuttered. "I know we're already married," he said, opening the box to reveal a beautiful ring with small diamonds arranged in a pattern that looked like stars. "But I want to do this right. I want to ask you properly, not as a business arrangement or a strategy, but as a man who loves you more than anything. Chelsea Jones, will you marry me again? Will you choose me, knowing everything you know now, and let me choose you every single day for the rest of our lives?" Chelsea was crying before she'd even realized it, happy tears running down her face. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." Ji-hwan slipped the ring onto her finger, her right hand, since she was still wearing the original wedding band, on her left. And then he was crying too, and they were both laughing at themselves for being emotional disasters in the middle of this fancy restaurant. "I love you," Ji-hwan said. "I love you too," Chelsea replied, "even though you made me cry in public. That's your own fault for having feelings. Your fault for asking beautiful questions." They had their second wedding 3 months later. Not a huge society affair like the first one, but a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Chelsea's family flew in from Zimbabwe, and Ji-hwan's mother cried through the entire thing. They wrote their own vows this time. "I promise to always tell you the truth," Ji-hwan said, holding both her hands. "Even when it's hard, I promise to be your partner, not your protector or provider or manager, but your actual equal partner in everything. I promise to keep volunteering at the library with you, even though my Korean homework explanations are apparently terrible, according to Mrs. William." Everyone laughed. "And I promise to love you exactly as you are, while supporting you in becoming whoever you want to be. You saved me, Chelsea, from a life that looked successful but felt empty. Thank you for giving me a second chance." Chelsea took a breath to steady herself. "I promise to be patient when you forget that not everything is a problem to solve. I promise to tell you when I need space and when I need closeness. I promise to keep making you watch terrible movies and drag you to amusement parks, and teach you that having fun isn't beneath anyone, And I promise to love you through the good parts and the complicated parts and everything in between. You helped me find a home, Ji-hwan, not just in Korea, but in myself. Thank you for fighting for us even when I was ready to run. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The reception was perfect. Good food, better company, and a dance floor where Chelsea taught Ji-hwan's entire family some Zimbabwean dances that they absolutely butchered, but had fun trying. At one point, Yuna cornered Chelsea near the dessert table. "So," she said, grinning, "you tamed the Ice Prince after all." "I didn't tame anyone," Chelsea protested. "We just learned to be ourselves together." "That's even better," Yuna said, hugging her. "Welcome to the family, for real this time." Later, when things had quieted down and most of the guests had left, Ji-hwan and Chelsea stood on the terrace of the venue, looking out at Seoul's lights. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Incredibly," Chelsea said, leaning back against him. "You?" "More than I ever thought possible." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for not getting on that plane. Thank you for coming after me." They stood like that, watching the city sparkle, thinking about everything that had brought them to this moment, the mistakes and the growth, the running away and the coming back, the contract that had become a choice. "So what now?" Chelsea asked eventually. "Now we live," Ji-hwan said simply. "We keep building this life together, one day at a time. We fight and make up and volunteer at libraries and watch terrible movies and visit your family, and maybe someday have kids who will be way better at kimchi making than either of us." "Definitely better at kimchi making," Chelsea agreed, laughing. "And we love each other," Ji-hwan continued, "through all of it. The boring parts and the exciting parts and everything in between. Deal?" "Deal," Chelsea said, turning in his arms to face him. "Partners?" "Partners," Ji-hwan confirmed. And right there, under the Seoul night sky, they kissed like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. They had the rest of their lives to figure out this beautiful, complicated, real thing they'd built together. From a fake marriage to a real love story. Not because it was easy, but because they chose it. Chose each other. Every single day. And honestly, that made all the difference. This story probably had you feeling all kinds of ways, so drop a comment and tell me which part got you the most. The airport scene, the terrible kimchi attempt, or maybe when everything fell apart and came back together. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next story.